Okay, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Wendy Panche, and I'll be your host today. So I'm a special guest today. I'm representing, of course, as a copy. We welcome you to these conferences, and we are very happy to see you here today. The idea is to start with all the conferences this year, and before we start with our webinar, I'd like to give you some announcements. So the first one, um, give me a second. I'm sharing the screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we
Yeah.
can.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So I have two quick announcements. So the first one is regarding our event. As you know, we have our event this year. So this is an invitation for you to join us. This year, our event will be at Universidad Industrial de Santander in Bucaramanga. So we strongly invite you to send your proposals. The call for papers is coming soon. So we want to invite you to join us and to be part of one of the biggest communities here in ELT in Colombia. So that is the first announcement. And the second announcement is for our webinar. So our conference today will be titled Antiracist Pedagogy in ELT, Opportunities Beyond Challenges. So I want to introduce Professor Jonathan Delgado. He's an associate teacher educator at Institución Universitaria Colomboamericana UNICA, and he's also a research assistant at Universidad de los Andes in Bogotá, Colombia. He's also pursuing the PhD in education at Universidad de los Andes. And he holds also a master's degree in applied linguistics and a bachelor degree in teaching English as a foreign language from Universidad Estatal. His research interests revolve around inclusion, decolonial studies in ELT, and design in ELT. He belongs also to the research groups Innovate from UNICA. So we welcome you, Professor Jonathan. And we are very happy to see you today here in our conference, in our webinar.
Thank you, Professor Wendy. I'm very glad to be here. I also want to add that I'm also part of the board of directors of ASOCOPI, and I'm very glad to like have this first session of the year. And well, we are here because we love English language teaching and we believe in education in Colombia. So I'm gonna start sharing my screen. Give me one sec. Yeah. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we see your screen.
All right. So, just like Professor Wendy mentioned, the title of my presentation is Antiracist Pedagogy in ELT. There's a lot of opportunities, but we have also to confront different challenges. I would like to start with a quotation made by a lot of people, and it's this, that is, it may be very debatable, but it has a lot of political implications over here. So it says the opposite of racism is not being non-racist. It is anti-racism. Neutrality doesn't really exist. When we are neutral, we are promoting silence somehow. And it is not something to feel ashamed of. This is something that we have to consider. It is what happens with racism and anti-racism is that they are not fixed identities. We may have been, well, I'm talk I'm gonna be talking in first person. I may have been to some point in my life a racist person. It may have been some unconscious act that I did, but the fact that I am trying to reflect about it, it means that I'm also trying to move beyond that, and I'm trying to become anti-racist person. I am doing an effort here, and I would like to invite you to do efforts for us to become anti-racist teachers. Now, let me tell you what I'm going to be discussing today. I want to confess something. This This is a topic I am passionate about. Basically, this is um, the research topic of my PhD proposal. This is, in fact, the very first presentation I have of my project, of my inquiry about racism and anti-racism. So I am very open to the discussion. I want to be like very um, it's not just me presenting, but I want to hear from you criticism, suggestions, anything you may want to say right after I finish this presentation. So I'm going to tell you where this topic comes from and all the things that we can do as teachers. So let's start talking about how this problem emerged for me. So let's start talking about my personal experience. Who am I? Um, I used to be a teacher from the UNAT University, Universidad Nacional Abierta de Estancia, and I had the chance to work at the bachelor degree in ethnoeducación. So I used to work as a tutor of a pre-service teacher in Quito. She was a woman that had a very difficult life story. She was mother of three kids. What she did to support economically her family was to work as a person who was selling lottery on the streets. It was a very difficult situation. Once we had a tutoring session, I was waiting for her. She told me, uh, "Teacher, I cannot attend the tutoring session because there was a flood in my neighborhood." So I was really concerned about this. Like, um, I noticed a lot of passion on her, a lot of interest in learning. She wanted to become a teacher, but I was also wondering and asking myself, why didn't she study a bachelor degree like in language teaching or something like that? She wanted to be an ethno educator because she started. One day I asked her why, and she says that she believes in all that there are certain policies that even though we might consider there is some sort of structural racism in Colombia, there are certain policies that are trying to defend our rights as individuals, but they are not being applied. So she wants to be aware of these policies and start thinking about how she can uh, improve education and how she could improve like the language teaching in her town. So I also had other interests. Like I'm a real fan of Professor Nunez Pardo because her life story, her academic life story has been to unveil like the coloniality of power, coloniality of knowledge, and coloniality of being in the materials. And she's trying to show how all these materials are colonized. So you can read not only her article by 2021, but also all her latest production. And you can see how she has established frameworks for analyzing how coloniality is present in teaching materials. Teaching materials that we normalize and we consider this is definitely not racist, but she lets us know how like different types of colonialities may be present. This is not an invitation for us to stop using these materials because it's like a very important tool when we are using materials from the internet. Those books, all the books that publishing houses provide us with, um, those are like different helps aids that we have as teachers. But the invitation of Professor Nunez Pardo is to start considering and reading critically the materials that we are using and notice that there is something beyond that. We have to start thinking about those hidden discourses in the materials we are using for our classes. Finally, my locus of enunciation. I have been throughout my life trying to analyze how different dynamics of power occur in the teaching of languages and how language is exerted through power dynamics. So I consider that one important dimension to analyze, to analyze in an intersectional frame is racial power. Now, the second source of inspiration I have for this is that the reports on racial discrimination in Colombia. There is something very sad about this. And the saddest thing about this is that there are just a few reports. There are not enough reports about how this violence is occurring. But yet there's something. The Observatorio de Violencia Escolar de la Secretaría de Educación de Bogotá reported 181 cases of discrimination during the first semester of 2024. That was the last time I checked this. Well, the last time I checked this, these reports from Observatorio de Violencia Escolar was in November 2025, which means that we are missing more reports. And also, Vision Afro, a non-governmental organization, supports this idea by saying that there is an absence of national tracking of racial violence. So there are many things that happen in schools, many different forms of violence that are not tracked because of different uh, acts of political acts. When we talk about micropolitics and macropolitics, there is a lack of control of the protocols. Yes, in some schools there might be some protocols, there might be some reports, but they are not usually socialized. So my locus of enunciation is like to get here to as a copy to denounce all this violence that is occurring in the educational context. And this violence that is occurring hinders the learning of languages. Tell me how we can think of strategies for optimizing the learning of English when we have kids who have been violated, when we have hungry kids, kids that are like full of this need for vengeance because they have suffered from racist violence. So when we have like these emotional borders, it is difficult to think of optimizing strategies for teaching a language. Uh, my third um, my third inspiration for this research study is like the all this bilingualism and the connection it has with racialization in Colombia. So um, Nancy Palacios, who is a professor um, in the university where I am currently studying, she's like a leader from um, a, an institution called Africa en la Escuela. She wrote an article that says, el ámbito de ley educativa se amplía homogéneamente y los marcos de actuación con autonomía de las comunidades se cierran. So this means that we have a lot of different policies to defend our rights as human beings, but these these political frames are not applying in the educational context. And finally, my final source of inspiration was the search of studies that I was clearing out. So I am currently carrying out a Prisma protocol to map out different studies that search for the connections between bilingualism policies and Afro-Colombian ethno-education. This was like a narrowed down version of the narrow ethno-education search that I was doing, because yes, we have a lot of studies in Colombia, more than in the search I carried out in Google Scholar and other databases. I found that there are more than 100 studies that mention bilingualism in Colombia. We also have more than, I don't remember the exact number, but we have a lot of studies in Colombia, I guess more than 100 studies that talk about Afro-Colombian ethno-education. But there is like this lack of intersection among these two. Yes, there are a few studies. Like, for example, we have this one over here by Martinez 2029. And he also problematizes this, saying that there are no documents related to Colombia's national bilingualism plans that present any proposal for integrating Afro-Colombian cultures into English language teaching. There in the suggested curricula of the national bilingualism plan, there is like an um, intercultural approach, yet there might be some criticism towards this intercultural perspective of education, that considering that this might be a little bit functional since this is not considering what is happening with Afro-Colombian ethno-education. And finally, there's like this um, this motivation that I have, that is the CEA diagnosis. CEA stands for Cátedra de Estudios Afrocolombianos, or the chair of Afro-Colombian Studies, that establishes that yes, there are some proposals to approach a English language teaching from an Afro-Colombian perspective, but this has been, however, limited. Now, what I am inquiring on, how I am theorizing, the theoretical ground that I am currently having, that is in constant change and challenge, is like we need to understand the concepts of race, racialization, and racism. Also, what the chair of Afro-Colombian Studies implies for English language teaching, the racialization in ELT, and the anti-racist pedagogy in language education as an alternative to the structural racism that Ryuko Kubota establishes. So let me tell you a little bit about this. Kubota in 2019, however, she has been talking throughout all her academic life about racism and how racism occurs in English language teaching. She establishes three types of racism. We have the individual racism, that is like person to person. When we see like there are offensive words thrown against one person, one individual to another person, there's also structural racism, or institutional racism, as is also known. What is structural racism about? Well, racism is not only about the color of our skins, it goes beyond that. Racism also talks about discriminations because of the of physical traits we are born with. So this also implies like ableism, or what we usually refer to in Spanish as capacitismo. We also refer to processes of xenophobia, because why xenophobia? Because in the United States, actually, that's like Latinx are considered, they are conceived as people of a different color of skin. So this also entails like this structural violence that is against a group of people. It also moves beyond the color of the skin. It moves also to the ethnicity and the physical capacities of or projections of a person. So she says that when we talk about structural racism, we can talk about, let's say, the teaching of history. What history is being taught? Do we really know about how Haiti held in the independence of Colombia? Do we really know about the Black Christmas, the Black December in Pasto? Yes, probably some of you know about that. But I mean, do all students in Colombia, thanks to the national curriculum in Colombia, know about the role of palenqueros? Do they know about the role of Black people in the independence of Colombia? So yes, some of us may know about it, but not all students know about this. And it's like, what kind of texts are being offered? What kind of opportunities are offered to certain groups of people? Um, this is not to talk about only about Black people. We are talking about human beings. Do all human beings have the same opportunities of access? And we're going to see in some material like how we can approach this and how we can visualize this in classes in general. Now, Soler Castillo, who's a researcher from Universidad Distrital, has been usually talking about trying to conceptualize about what race means, what racialization and racism means. And she brings up very important discussion. So there is this book here. I don't know if you can see it over here. It's a very interesting book. So the name of this book is Mira, un negro, elementos para pensar el racismo y la resistencia. So I kindly invite you to read this book because um, she states something very powerful by Bembe, a very important activist. And she, throughout the words of other authors, states that las razas no existen. No, that is a biological construction. How how come do we consider that races do not exist? Well, the races are an epistemological conceptualization of the bodies of people to support with the discourse of biology that some bodies are inferior to others, that some bodies are more likely to, more prone to developing physical works, while other bodies that are like um, into this wide frame are more for the intellectual work. So as I'm going to be discussing later on, uh, there has been a discussion on how the concept of race was constructed in previous centuries. Um, so there is this decree. The something very important I want to discuss here is also the chair of Afro-Colombian Studies as an alternative um, to face these problems of race, racialization, and racism. Um, and is the Decree 11/2022 of 1998, which is the origin of the Chair of Afro-Colombian Studies. And this is a very important decree because it establishes an opportunity to celebrate diversity that the Constitution of 1991 established. It recognizes the existence of difference, well, the Constitution. So this decree said that all schools from no matter if it's a public school, a private school, in the in the basic cycle of education, which means from the first grade to ninth grade, should somehow celebrate the chair of Afro-Colombian studies. What does it mean? There should be a visibilization of the Afro-Colombian population, uh, their customs, um, and their visions of the world. It's not just like to understand the what we have usually been sold and what we understand by culture, that is what the culture that can be consumed, that we can see in different books. For example, in the textbooks we can see that culture is understood as the foods, varieties of food, the food that I can eat in a place, the dances, the places that I can visit as a tourist. No, the clothing that I can wear. Is culture is something beyond that. One of the ideas of the Chair of Afro-Colombian Studies is like to start dismantling this discourse. So for that, there have been different documents that the chair, the CEA established, and one of them, which is one of the most important opportunities that we have, is this one. This is a document that is the Braiding Networks of Freedom, and this Braiding Networks of Freedom is an open file, is an open document that you can see, that you can use for your English classes. You can try to incorporate it because this was a national creation, and this document shows us possibilities to teach the Afro-Colombian cultures their how they see their ancestors, their history, and how we can use this as a material for teaching English. This is a material that can be adapted to different levels. You can make adaptations thanks to your background knowledge and thanks to the current uses of artificial intelligence. We could make adaptations to different kinds of populations, from A1 levels to C1 levels, depending on your needs as teachers. Um, then we have the racialization in English language teacher by Professor Bonilla et al. And she's also like trying to investigate and see and shows us, and she's showing us how there have been different processes of racialization in English language teaching that I will be mentioning later on. We also, I would also like to mention the anti-racist pedagogy in language education as an alternative, let's say as a kind of methodological alternative to start like reconsidering the approaches and the methodologies that we can use. Yes, we have been taught different methodologies in the curricula in our bachelor programs, but we can also incorporate, we can also start thinking about an anti-racist pedagogy as an alternative to be civilized and learn about others. So this is a proposal that has been thoroughly developed by Heinz Gaither and Axelion, and of course by Kubota, the same person, Ryuko Kubota, and another researcher, Motha, that was a proposal they started in 2025. So in 2020, in 2019, sorry, the Kubota started denouncing this structural racism, and now they are proposing in 2025 an alternative to this structural racism. Now, how can we see race, racialization, and racism? So let me tell you some important facts in a chronological order. So Fanon, Franz Fanon, in no, sorry. Here, let's start with Gobineau. So here, this is one of the first theories that started developing the concept of race. So he is a biologist that, using the arguments of Charles Darwin and the evolution of species, he says that there are certain biological traits of individuals that determine the psychology and the moral behaviors. What does this mean? That the whiter your skin is, the better your moral behaviors are. The darker your skin is, the less moral your behaviors will be, which means that if your skin is dark, you are an immoral person and you are not worth for the arts. It means that you should be used, your body should be used for the hard work. So this is like let's say this was used as a scientific argument to determine that the race is something important to determine the jobs. And it was like an idea also of the illustration to raise this idea of that some people would be doing a great job and they could be like fantastic people if they just choose the right profession. And this also says that by choosing the right profession, we kids don't know how to choose the right profession, so we should help them. This means that uh, teachers should take the young kids and teach them that they are immoral because their skin is dark somehow. So because of their nature, they're not allowed to do intellectual work, and they need to understand that. So that's the argument by Gobineau. So I invite you to read this text. This is I would say that this is the first scientific act of racism that existed. Like, they were using this discourse of Darwin, they were using the arguments of um, Wells, let me check, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. They were using the arguments of the Emilio o de la Educación by Jean Rousseau as arguments to establish that not all kids should have the same type of education. So this is something very sad to see how science is used to construct the concept of race. Then Fanon, a Black activist, says that racism is part of the coloniality of being. Black bodies, if they want to succeed, they need to wear white masks. And this is how racism also occurs. Racism can also occur from let's say, a colonized body from another colonized body. That's how we have to understand intersectionality. What does it mean? We know that historically, the gender struggle, like the feminist struggles, have been to give a voice, to be civilized, the rights of women. But what happened with the first a wave of feminism. So there was this struggle to get the right to vote, but what should we vote? In the United States, there were different amendments, and there were these like debates about slavery. Should we abolish slavery? So let's go and vote. Should, but in that moment, there was this struggle of women to vote. So it was like, why don't we give the right of women, the right to women to vote? That what Fanon is saying here is that when we see this in an intersectional way, however, he didn't come with the concept of intersectionality. It means that white women would also have more power than black men, and black men would also have more power than black women. So he started developing this idea that also helped in the future to Crenshaw to develop the concept of intersectionality in 1989. So we are forced to see it through the eyes of the colonizer and colonize other bodies. So Maria Isabel Mena, a very important activist in Colombia, says that racialization in Colombia takes the identities and problems that racism itself causes in the academic map. So what do we mean with this that she's saying? When we talk about um, academia, there's also some sort of racism because of the papers that are published, um, the amount of papers and the trends in research have also should also be considered. What are the most, well, the trendiest topics in research right now in ELT? So that's something that we have to read critically. Why are certain topics accepted in certain journals and other topics are not? What topics are like being like more cited than others? So Bembe also says that there is a logic of the inclusion. So this means that there is an organization and hierarchization of bodies of people. What I was mentioning before with Fanon, that there is this hierarchy where, according to these theories of racialization, let's say that we have the white middle class men that are superior to the white middle class women, but the white middle class women are superior to the black men, but the black man is at the same time superior to the black woman, and then the black heterosexual man is superior to a black homosexual man, and so on and so forth. And this brings also issues of immigration and all these discussions that also have to be considered when we are um, analyzing what's going on over here. Soler Castillo, by the way, she was my professor and I really admire her. And if she happens to see these recordings someday, well, here I am reading her work. So she says that there's a set of practices and discourses that fabricate the other. So there is this theory of the other. It's me and then the other. What is the other? The other is the I am the good. Then we have the other that is the evil. So we have the black, the indigenous, the gypsy, and these are subjects of race. They have a savage exteriority. So the other is always feared. That's something that has to be considered through the chair of Afro-Colombian Studies, because the chair of Afro-Colombian Studies is inviting us to see the otherness of the world, the variety, diversity of the world as something beautiful to admire and celebrate. Kubota says also that there is an open and hidden practice involving individuals, institutions, and knowledge. So knowledge, as I said before, what happens with the teaching of history. Now in institutions, there are a lot of stories on how there might be more opportunities for different grants that involve topics that are like more related to what produces like economic income. And racial studies is not that. Now, what is the alternative? What do we have to do considering this? So there is this proposal of the anti-racist pedagogy um, that is proposed mainly by Heinz Geider. anaxilian. So they are critically highlighting racial inequalities in the classroom. So the classroom is a social space that is also a political space. And the classroom reveals a lot of power relations. I'm going to show you in a moment the 10 principles of anti-racism that are like principles that we can consider in our teaching of languages. But I'm going to jump to Jones. And Jones says that there is no neutral ground. Staying silent, and I find this really important, staying silent enables racism in the classroom. So when we see acts of racism by kids, of course, we are not to punish them, but how can we prevent that um, in considering the ethics of the other, like taking care, like the ethics of care. And Kubota in 2020 says that racism must be uncovered and understood through an intersectional lens. Now, let me tell you a little bit about the principles of anti-racism in language teaching. Um, so the first one is, like I said before, the silence is the enemy of anti-racism. That's what I said at the beginning of this session. Um, um, a Professor Kubota also states um, that silence is also a tool for establishing the status quo. There is a book that is called, you can Google it later on, that is called How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram X. Kendi, Professor Ibram X. Kendi, and he criticizes silence and he tries to understand how silence operates. We also have the anti-racism is a conscious journey, not a destination. So, and to become anti-racist is something that we day by day do by analyzing our own practices in the classroom. We also have that racism systematically and generationally disenfranchises people of different identities, and survival of BIPOC students and educators is paramount. What do we mean by this? People that are considered like the other, like we said before with Sandra Soler Castillo, that she was like showing us like the concept of otherness, the concept of the indigenous that is external to us, the gypsy, the black person, that the immigrant, that construction, that structural construction of the other is putting them in a position where they might be in danger. So like we have to create a space that is like an alternative for them and something that can show them how we are caring for everyone, regardless of color of skin, physical conditions. um, there should be an intersectional solidarity considering all the aspects that construct our individual and collective identities, centering their voices and giving a voice to everyone in materials is something important. It would be really nice to see English language teaching books with embedded populations, with indigenous populations of Colombia, where we can get to know them because we usually don't know them. We don't know what those 65 languages in Colombia are and where they are spoken, by whom. We also need to deconstruct the standard language ideology that getting like an American or British accent is the target that we should have. There are other things that have to be considered when we are learning a language. We have to remember that we are learning a language to communicate with others, to understand other people, not just to earn money. There should be a critical reflection of power on power dynamics. We as teachers, of course, we're not going to be teaching kids things that maybe uh, they they might not see clearly, but we as teachers can see more clearly. Now, action-oriented pedagogy. This is important. I have been showing you a lot of theory, what other people have said, but there are other things that can be said. And reflexivity and addressing personal bias. Something very important if we want to have an action-oriented pedagogy is that we need to start asking ourselves what kind of biases we have We may all have biases. I do have biases. I have had biases. But the first step is to start acknowledging this fact that we have biases and that we need to start recognizing what those biases are. Now, the alternatives for this. The chair of Afro-Colombian Studies that yes, there may be a lot of criticism about this, but I want to show you what has been proposed here. So there are many things that implement this. There is curricular implementation with the Cátedra de Estudios Afrocolombianos curricular guidelines. There are proposals, like I said before, the braiding networks of freedom. So I'm going to show you this cuaderno pedagógico to show you how it looks. Can you see my PDF? Am I displaying the PDF?
Yes, we do see it.
Thank you. So this is a material developed here in Colombia to teach English, to teach about the different identities that we have. And this is, I find it beautiful. Here, look at the topics we have. African women in emancipation processes, activities. It's not only readings, but we have activities, deciphering the secret code, African American heroines and heroes. We have activities. So you see Harriet Tubman with an activity, Angela Davis, Malcolm X, African Colombian leaders. So we have interesting activities like Memories of Liberty Day, Pecos Bayojo, Arnoldo Palacios, and activities like reading the world through literature. And you can explore this material. I think the microphone is activated.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So something important is like that helps us to see like the problematics on this is like this document that is called the Diagnóstico e Implementación de la Cátedra de Estudios Afrocolombianos, Experiencias y Perspectivas de la Diversidad Étnica y Cultural de la Nación. So this is a very important document because here we are showing proposals, but we also need to understand what is happening in the real context, in the real Colombia. So this is a wide panorama. Because of time, I'm not gonna go deeper into all this, but this is something that you can explore by yourselves. Now, I would like to show you, well, this is like what has been researched about this. In Colombia, we have studies related to, well, based on the Prisma studies that I have been carrying out, we have like some trends that are race and the teaching of English. And Oliveira says it is not possible to analyze race and professional identity separately. We are teachers, but we also have to see our dimensions of race. How are we understood? Do we have any conception about whiteness? Like also the teaching practices in Afro-Colombian regions. So Martinez says that, like I said before, there is no place for ethno-education in the National Bilingualism Plan. And after revising this National Bilingualism Plan, I would dare say the same. I agree with Martinez. The implementation of the CEA. So this is according to Mosquera, this is an opportunity to implement inclusive and intercultural education in Colombia that needs further exploration. Also, and as an anti-racist pedagogy and critical interculturality, we need to have recognition and transformative actions of recognition and action against racism in the classroom, like microaggressions, biases, and naturalization of white privilege. Like I said before, the opposite of racism is not being non-racist. It is anti-racist. Now, I would like to show you a bank of resources. So I like this image because, yes, in fact, Bogotá tiene mucho que contar about anti-racist practices, but that's the problem. Bogotá tiene mucho que contar, but how about the rest of the country? So my study, what I want to do in my PhD thesis is to explore, to go to other regions in Colombia to see what is happening in terms of English language teaching and anti-racist pedagogy. So I want to share this with you. So here I have the QR code that I will be sure you can check it out in the recording. Now I developed some sort of materials that you can use and you can adapt to your classes. So first, well, I have different source of material. First, I came up with an adaptable AI prompt. So we have a lot of materials on the internet, but how can we use them for our real needs? So I came up with this prompt that is act as an expert using the um, a certain technique, a certain structure to generate this. So act as an expert in EFL and anti-racist education based on the following context. Now, if you use this prompt, this is where you can include your own context. You can add the level of students, the age, the school type, duration of the classes, materials that you're using or that are available, the linguistic profile of students, social context. You just need to have one prompt developed, and then you can continue developing. Design a complete lesson plan. You can adapt this. Maybe you don't need a whole lesson plan that integrates language objectives and anti-racist goals, considering the anti-racist perspective of Heinz Geider and Axelian. Um, Ensure the lesson is realistic, culturally sensitive, and adaptable to my context. And then you can continue developing a workflow with that. I also developed, as an example, a very, I wouldn't say silly, but this is an example of what we can do using AI tools. So I developed a story. So this is a story. This is my prompt. Create a story that fosters respect for diversity. This story is directed to students of ninth grade at a public school in Tunja. The story is about monsters. Some of them are bullying a new monster that arrived at school. At the end, everyone recognizes the differences and they become friends. So this is a very interesting story that was developed. This is like the PDF about a girl that was different from the others, and she felt very rejected, but she couldn't see her inner beauty. Um, so, well, after some time, she started like understanding what happened. So you can develop your own situated stories with this. Now, I also developed a notebook LM collection of material. Um, for teaching anti-racist tools. So here I have like how many tools? Like 10 tools or approximately about teaching materials that you can use in your classes and how you can integrate all of them. So here you can see like PowerPoint presentation, a podcast that was generated with AI, another podcast like active guide to anti-racism flashcards, everything. Like you also have like key concepts to understand how this is constructed. This material, especially this can be used for bachelor degrees. This conceptualization here, but the others are used here. Now, what are these materials? So I made a list over here of the materials that you can use. So here, this is a sociometrics test that we can use. As I said before, the most important is to start recognizing what biases we have. I didn't like this these psychometric tests. However, I included it because, well, this is one tool that can lead us to other tools as well to start recognizing the race implicit association test, the race implicit bias that we have. And now we have collective organizations. So we have here a website of anti-racism tools. This was developed by Heinz Geider and Cecily Axian. So you can explore a lot of things, video podcasts, health-related take action tools. Over here we have other organizations. I like this one especially because it's about lesson plans, how you can develop lesson plans. And this is a great example. We have one for the New York Times. This was a really great example if we like this very structured methodology of having pre-activities, while activities, anything for our classes. So you can use all this material over here. Now we have videos. Out of the material that I found for you, this is the one, the videos are the ones I enjoyed the most. Like this is an activity that we can do with kids, regardless of the class that we have. If we have an English class, we have a biology class, it's like This is a, let's say, class activity we can do to explain kids privilege, how we can explain privilege through arrays to kids. There is another video. This could be used, for instance, for a listening activity on how systemic racism operates. Now, the myth of race debunked in 3 minutes by Box. The Atlantic slave trade, if you have history classes as well. The See Me Too. This is an interesting documentary. Now that we are integrating this into a wider perspective of social emotional care, like how we can like integrate mental health and inclusion. So and this is like very this has like great visuals. So you don't need to have like your students don't need to have like a high proficiency to understand the material and the things that are occurring over here. There's also like a short documentary on Netflix that was uploaded to YouTube that is Racial Wealth Gap, and another one that is a short film that is Just Ignore It. This is beautiful. Believe me, I enjoyed watching this. So these are some materials. As we can see, there is like this conceptualization that we can have, like to understand the ground where we are um, moving, like this coloniality of knowledge that comes even from Darwin, but moves forward to our days. What has been done in Colombia so far in terms of research and in terms of teaching initiatives, policy making initiatives, and just like paraphrasing the words of Professor Nancy Palacios, hay mucho que se ha dicho y poco que se ha hecho. So our invitation is to do many things related to this. So these are the materials available for you to explore. And I want to finish this with an ethical statement of this. For this presentation, as you can see, I use Notebook LM, Elicit to Explore, SciSpace, and Canva for support. You can see here how I use AI, and my level, according to IS scale, was of AI planning and collaboration. So there's a book that talks about resistance. This book is called No Give Up, Man, No Te Rindas by Hazel Robinson. So, gracias and no give up. That would be it. These are my references. Now, maybe we have a very short time for questions and comments.
Thank you very much, Professor Jonathan, for your presentation. I think that's a very engaging topic. I also love these topics about race, racialization. So I think we have some minutes for a question. And of course, I was wondering if you can share us your email for the participants, maybe to text you, maybe if they have more questions
Yeah, I'll write it down in the
in the chat.
chat.
Or okay, thank you very much. I don't know, maybe we have time for a question, so I don't know, maybe if the audience has a question for our guest today. You can type the question in the chat. Okay, thank you. We have Lina's question. So, Lina.
Hello.
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 Hello. Okay, I have to tell that it is incredible all the information you are just sharing about it. And here we met students about listening to you and how we have it had reduced thought about what is racism. And you said maybe at the previous part it was only based about a skin color, but it is anymore. It's not only about that. So I would like to ask you about how digital tools can support about anti-racist pedagogy in ELT. Here we have enormous kind of resources, materials, but it's going to be so nice to hear you about it or give us some recommendations.
Thank you for your question. We have to First, I would have to say that we have to start reading all these new waves of tech tools in a very critical sense. Why? let's talk about a few examples. I don't know if you're familiar with this um, AI tool created by Elon Musk. Um, I forgot the name. Well, what happens with these tools? They are like I can see here clearly how the colonialization of knowledge might be affecting the way that tools can be used. Why am I saying this? Well, as you know, the different AI tools, what they do is to try to read all the available information on the internet, starting by Wikipedia, but then moving to other open sources of information to start like feeding the large language models. So what happens when these AI tools start absorbing the discourses of hate and racism that we can see in social media, like for example, Twitter or X. So we have to be careful with this because this linguistic corpus is what is feeding the AI. So if you there is an example of what you can do, like you can ask an AI, your favorite AI, to you can say this prompt: create an image of an English language teacher to see what body representations are portrayed in this. Now, if we know how to use them, we can see here a lot of possibilities. There are limitless possibilities to use this, and it's like first, you have to read the context. Here, I gave you an example of a prompt we can design to start adapting material. So remember that when we are designing material, we basically have three roles: creators of material, adapters of material, and adopters of material. So I would say that the most practical and the most critical thing that we can do is to be adapters. We have to read the materials that are produced by AI, and also the material, even the materials that I am suggesting, they might have some bias. I might have some bias. So the idea would be for you to start reading critically the materials and see the possibilities using prompts to adapt to these materials.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
So thanks to you. So, well,
Okay. I think we won't have time for more questions, but Professor Jonathan already shared his email in the chat. So we invite you to send him an email with your questions. Okay, I have a comment. We have a comment here that says, I was wondering if there's any research on this recent gente color carton racist trend. I've heard about it several times during the last couple of years, and I think it needs attention, for a great number of Colombians are son tant, desde bronceados, ¿no? Okay.
So, well, just to close up with this, definitely the use of these expressions, gente color cartón. Yes, I am not that familiar with that so far because I have tried to establish the correlation between the bilingualism policies and anti-racist education. However, this is a topic that I am sure there is some research, but is more into a semiotic perspective. It would be okay. It would be great to see how it may affect what correlations and implications it may have with the ELT. But yes, I'm not. I haven't started searching for that, to be honest, because right now the Prisma protocol I am following that has a very let's say a little bit more reduced scope. But now that you mention it, would be great to see because the use of these expressions like gente color cartón is something that might emerge out of the narratives of the students that are suffering from racism and teachers that are suffering from racist practices. So thank you for your question. I'm gonna consider it, but so far I haven't yet considered that research.
Okay. Thank you, Fernando, for your question, and thank you very much for your attendance. So we look forward to seeing you in the next webinars. And as I said before at the beginning, we invite you to participate in our events this year, the Congress in October, and you can find all the information on our website as a copy. Um, and also on the social media, Facebook and Instagram accounts. Thank you very much for your assistance, and see you in the next webinars. Thank you very much.
Thank you all, and thank you, Wendy, for inviting me here.
Thanks, Professor Jonathan.
Bye, everyone.
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Oh, Jose said something. Okay. Thank you,
Wait.
Jose Antonio, for your resource. I have it here, and I'll check it out. All right. Bye.